me here. So I've already kind of teed them up that if they don't ask questions, I'm going to ask them questions. So we're definitely going to get it. And I want to have some fun with this, right? This is supposed to be a conversation. This isn't me just talking the whole time. I want us to learn from each other. I think that's a big part of this. I wrote this book, Cognitive Writing, Writing for the Mind. This is the education edition, and I released it all as well as the author's edition. They're essentially, the secret is they're about the same. The author's edition has a couple more goodies, but the the education edition exists is mainly it's out there on the web. You can download it. You can download it for free. You can go read it. I encourage you to do so. Um, what I was doing and how this kind of book kind of came about is I wrote the book in 23 days. Um, I actually wrote two versions of the book in 23 days because I wrote 45,000 words the first week, threw it all away, and then wrote the second 68 or 62,000 in the second week, just because the first one wasn't good enough. So I had to start over again, right? So, but this came about because I took a journey. I describe it in the author's edition. I I've never liked writing. I have dysgraphia. Writing is difficult for me. It's hard. So I remember being in high school, turning in my last assignment, walking away, and hoping I never had to write again. Over the years, I wrote three different stories: one at 19, age 19, one at age 22, and one at age 40, for various different reasons. And then about a year and a half ago, I started my own business. And in order to build my expertise and to show what I have and my brand, I started writing posts on LinkedIn. I wrote over 100 posts, posting two every week. And one of the things I started to see is people reacted differently to my writing than just normal writing, just everyday writing, right? So I found out I was doing something different. So I took one weekend, I took three pieces of my writing, the first three I'd written, completely reverse engineered them and figured out why they worked by watching on how they work in the mind. And then I wrote that down into a book. So the premise here is if you write something and put it into a desk, put it in your drawer and nobody ever reads it, is it really writing? Right? Writing is the transference of an idea from thought into a written form or typed or whatever that is. It's transferring information so that when somebody reads it, it rehydrates that idea back into the reader's mind if you've done a good job in a various approximation of what that original idea was. So, what I've done in the book is I've kind of detailed out through 25 chapters with different techniques. I wrote 25 samples, and then I broke down in each chapter as to why they work, what's going on with them. A lot of it plays into theory of mind concept, but I would extend that a little bit to more of theory of cognition, right? I'm anticipating and I've kind of built my own theories about how cognition works. So it allows me to kind of predict the cognitive effect or something that something will have. Using the technique, I've been able to write things that have a reading level of basically zero, basically kindergarten level, right? So, a 5-year-old could read it, but it has profound emotional impact at the same time. So one of the other interesting things about the book is it's published form. It's 68,000 words. The entire book is written with the technique itself. So it scales. It's not just for creative writing. It can be used for any type of writing. Because as I said, writing is about really putting things into the mind. So in chapter or appendix A of the book, one of the things that I want you to go and download and read is I've written in there a theory, right? And what I call infant mode theory. And the way that it works is think about this from this for a second, right? When we're born, we're infants, but yet through pattern recognition and archetypes, we start to understand who caregiver is, who mom is. We start to see the difference between primary caregiver and secondary caregivers. We know what those are, right? If you think about that for a second, that's extreme genius level intelligence to pull that off, right? To look at that and to know that without any other world, knowing about the world. They only can barely see, and yet they figure that out. Our minds are wired for archetype thinking. But then our education system trains us through categorical thinking. Here's what shapes are, numbers are, letters are. Here's, categories, pass, fail, boys on this side of the room, girls on that side of the room. We're pounded into our minds this idea of categorical thinking before the critical stage of pruning happens in our mind. And it's kind of locked in. And that original archetype mode is there, but it kind of falls into the background. It hibernates, right? It's not our default mode. And different people, different ways of thinking, preserve various different parts of that, which is why some people can pattern match extremely well, and some people get very rigid in their thought process. The book itself is written in 25 chapters and is long enough to where if you engage with it for a long enough time, it will help the theory is it'll reactivate that part of your mind because you can't read the stories in the book through traditional methods using just the parts of your brain you would normally use for writing. It activates instead of the primary four up to 10 different parts of your brain reading this book. And it doesn't feel like effort because it's natural. Your body remembers, your mind remembers how to do that. But through neuroplasticity and enough effort, it will actually retrain your mind. So think about in school, two things I want to do, and then I want to open this up for discussion a bit, right? In writing, we often hear the phrase show, don't tell. But then we do the exact opposite. We describe things in exhaustive detail so people know exactly what we're talking about. My writing does the exact opposite. Cognitive writing leverages what I call cognitive ownership. So let's assume for a moment, and I want to take an exercise here. So everybody's going to do this, right? So open up the chat window, and I'm going to tell you guys about a story about a cat, and that cat's playing with a ball. Now, humor me. What color is the cat? Put it in chat. Just a color and hit enter. That's all I'm looking for. Okay, now notice we're getting various different answers, but at the same time, all these answers are absolutely correct because I've never given you the color of the cat. The cat is the cat that you formed in your mind, and through either episodic memory, preferences, or whatever, however it's your mind wants to work, it's coming up with that color of the cat. Now, if I come up and tell you that no, the cat in my story is purple, instantly what happens is I transfer ownership from you as the owner to now you're an observer. I'm the owner of the cat. It's now my cat. Right? Before that moment, if that cat goes off and does something heroic or something tragic happens to it, you feel it all the more because it's literally your cat. The moment I transfer it and something happens, then it's like, oh, interesting. That's a sad story or a cool story, right? So it uses that show don't tell in a way to the extreme by leaving it out, leaving the details out, and understanding how the mind constructs meaning. So it's really understanding meaning making itself. And the last part I want to kind of point out here is in school, if you think about education, one of the things that's I've been in the education system and then that space, one of the things they use is compare and contrast. The whole idea of compare and contrast is supposed to teach archetypal thinking, but it's flawed from the beginning because they called it compare and contrast. It's categorical mindset and framework to teach to teach archetypal thinking. So archetypes are thinking in the way we think about things as archetypes, not characters. You can't use a framework of categorical thinking to teach non-categorical thinking. It's flawed from the beginning. So this book is all about it teaches creative writing, it teaches cognitive flexibility. It teaches all those things to help you really understand it. And I released it into the OER system for free. Within 30 days, it was downloaded in 44 different countries over 200 times. And it's already being used by researchers in a couple different countries that have reached out to me. One from U of M, one from Malaysia, and one from University of Michigan that was, and another one in the US. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today and jam a little bit. So I'd love some questions. And if not, Ansher and Perry are going to ask me questions because I want this to be interactive. Um, so I see one in here, a comment in here from Roy. Thank you, Roy. That's why movies can rarely compete with books. That is your imagination. Absolutely, right? Our imaginations are so much more powerful and you can put so much more words. But most of the stories in my book have an average of 200 words. And the fascinating thing is that there's more words written in the reader's mind than on the page. because your mind will automatically fill in all the gaps and it will create an entire story from the scaffolding that I created in the story itself. Like I'm going to put one 3-word story that's chapter 9 in the chat, and I'll let you guys all sit with it for a second. It's a 3-word story, and it officially fits all the definition of an actual story. Now, I've had people react to that, right, who read it, who's had anything to move to tears to laughing out loud, right? So 3 same words have so much cognitive effort. Our mind instantly wants to fill in the patterns and see the things that it can have 2 completely different reactions based on somebody's mind and how their mind is fires and what's relevant in the context that they bring, right? The same 3 words have polarizing effects because they're a scaffolding for the actual. It's Sleepless in Seattle, isn't it? It's conceptually. um, but yeah, it could be, right? It could be anything, right? That's the beauty of it. It can be any interpretation is valid. So think about that for a second. Think about if we had this in a high school class or a classroom of teenagers, and we wrote down just like we did, and they all described what they were thinking, and realizing that from a just a social aspect, they can all be right at the exact same thing at the exact same time. What does that do to our community, to our world, when we can realize we can all be right and still have different answers? So, Perry, Andrew, thoughts, questions? Anybody else? Do we have any that I missed in the chat?
I think cognitive priming, cognitive framing is really strong, just because you can tell your audience how to think about what you're about to show them. You kind of prepare them for the fact that they're going to be presented with something that's going to let them put their own unique flavor in. What are some great techniques when you're trying to not break that fourth wall in the narrative to prompt a reader to do that?
So, actually, I mean, so like in chapter 22 of my book is called The End, right? So that framing, the title framing is designed because the story is immediately about 2 people, right, interacting, and there's a tragic event. The framing is designed to help create the scaffolding, put them in the right trajectory. So I have them heading the right direction. What it does is it gives them what I call the illusion of choice, right? I've given them the only logical outcome and led them to it, right? By framing it. So I think the title framing is very important. And sure, in my perspective, I would want that framing because I actually wrote in the book itself, I tried an experiment. Um, it's chapter 8. It's called The Watching. It puts time as the protagonist. Now, time itself, in this particular case, has episodic memory, right? So it can't ever remember anything past tick and talk. It remembers the things during tick, it knows what's going on, and talk resets every time, right? So that I tried an experiment of what if I don't give you anything to latch onto? If I keep it obscure, does the mind get there? And the mind goes to different places and it fits because your mind wants to find the connection. It wants to wire it together. So even when you don't give something like that, you're still going to end up causing the effect if you don't explicitly say what it is. But by setting the title framing in the beginning, by using it into your framing, then you're already pointing in the right direction. And Todd, I'm glad you brought up the, for sale baby shoes never worn. That's, Hemingway's famous one. Again, chapter 9, it talks about that. The difference there is Hemingway had his iceberg theory. I've documented in the book taking that slightly further to an event horizon theory in the concept of the iceberg theory. As the writer what you want to have happen, and that's what Hemingway's theory kind of is about, is he already knows what it is and he knows what details he can leave out so you get there. So For Sale's Baby Shoes Never Worn has a pretty predictable way that people will read it. There's an expected outcome there. It doesn't mean you can't take it other directions. If you want to be cognitive flexible enough, you can really look at it and take it from some interesting places. But there's an outcome that was expected. Wanted new money in in contrast to that is designed to where it's completely open-ended. It could be anything you need it to be. It could be an orphan looking for a parent. It could be a doll that wants a new child to love it, right? It could be a father that lost his wife somehow. It could be a child wanting a new parent. There's lots of different ways. So it doesn't lead to a distinct one direction. And a lot of what I call that in the
But
book is called
you can though.
protagonist.
You
You
can do
can.
it with a right. So like if like I saw a post on YouTube once that said to do a horror story in 3 words, and so my comment was, "Are you enough?"
Yes, I like that. Right. And yeah, having that idea of being
Mark's got
able
his
to,
hand raised, by the way, if you didn't get the
yeah, go
notice.
ahead. Mark, please go ahead.
Yeah, very serendipitous. He actually had a conversation in a group a few weeks ago, and it was the timing of the words or timing of the paradox being asked. If someone says the word beast, the immediate interpretations are something. But if someone said beast of burden first, collectively the group went to a mule or a donkey. And if they said beast of war, different things, sci-fi, everything else, and then they say unimaginable beast. However, if in that same series someone said unimaginable beast first, then beast of war, then beast of burden, what beast of burden interpreted to is completely different than a donkey or what have you. So within the context, you're priming, you're firing kind of where you get the imagination to create the neuroassociations and the interpretation, depending upon everything you're putting before it, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, Ansher and I were talking about that title framing, right? I talk about that in the book about is by calling the passage the end, I've already kind of primed your mind where I want you to go, right? So one example is a thought experiment is you take a cage and you take a bird and you've got to get the bird into the cage on the pedestal. Well, you make the bottom of the cage removable. So it's real easy. They open up the cage, they put the bird in, they're done. Now you seal the cage and you don't let that happen anymore, right? Now you got to get the bird inside. Well, you're automatically looking for the bird in your context. You've already established how the solution is. So your mind wants to go there when the answer is take a picture of the bird and put it behind the cage, right? So from the perspective, it's inside the cage, it's on the pedestal, even though you didn't actually put it there. But because you primed the mind, that thought process first, the mind has that pattern recognition. It wants to follow the pattern that it's learned. It's naturally going to go that way. So to your point, Mark, is you start putting the pattern there, you've set the direction, and you can even use persuasive, right? I talk about chapter 25 is about the ethics of doing this because once you understand how the mind works, you can really get people to where you want them in an idea by starting with where you want them to go and leading the breadcrumbs to lead them into the logical conclusion. So you have to be careful with what you're doing with this. And what I prove in the book is sometimes the lowest complexity words carry the most power.
Looks like we had a question. Someone had their hand raised.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're still muted.
CJ, it's CJ. Oh, CJ's gone. Oh,
She's working on the mute part.
okay.
Sorry,
There we
y'all.
go.
I am using this app for the first time on my new iPad. It's not like the most brand new one, but like anyway, so like everybody's annoyed that I've been using it on the iPhone and this is the first time not. And I'm not really sure how to fix the name situation. Anyway, thanks for y'all's
I fix it
patience.
for you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Sanchar. I had a question because you're talking about like priming people using the archetypes that are in their mind. How do you deal with that cross-culturally? Because like unfortunately my audience involves 3 different North American cultures and they all have 2 have very similar archetypes, but one has very different. And it's like I'm afraid to prime someone to have a thought that actually goes the opposite way, or just, goes a really different direction than I anticipated because I'm not as fluent in this culture and the archetypes that are here. Like, have you ever worked with that sort of balance?
Yes. So, and I love the question, right? And in fact, the entire book is written to be readily available for the global classroom without needing adaptation. Because what I've done is I've focused on that universal archetype. And there's one that Anja and I played with quite a bit in the book, chapter 21, called The Letter, that is really that universal letter for any person of any gender, you know, any identity plus any cultural background. Because when you look at it, there are enough intersection points that the key is you overlay the intersections and then only touch to those intersections and allow them to extract the information afterwards, right? So if I'm describing, for example, a vehicle, okay, and that vehicle it uh, it has 4 points of contact on the road. It seats 4 people. And it has a way to steer. It has round things on the front that help see in the dark. It's got something, it's got the thing that goes swish, 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 and it's got a trunk to put things in, right? So we all have a vision of what this vehicle would be, and it's all accurate. But what I was describing is an elephant. Okay. So once you see the connection points and you only talk about the connection points, our minds will automatically fill in the blank. So you're allowed to be less descriptive. There's the elephant. Thanks, Todd. Uh, you're allowed to be less descriptive about the details. You're working with an archetype. Archetypes themselves have no details. Let me give you a very simple example. Okay, CJ, I love you brought this up. How many of you heard of this? Mary had a little lamb. Has anybody
And a
heard of
side
it?
order of fries.
Okay, that might be cruel for some people, but yes, you can go there. The point of it is if I asked you right now to define Mary, to write down all the details about Mary, her age, what she's wearing, all of the description, which race she is, everything like that, we would all be correct. Nothing ever described Mary in the story,
And just to
but we all know what
supplement,
it is.
if you look at a book
Go
like
ahead.
Stephanie Meyer in Twilight, she kind of famously did this. When she's describing Bella, she just focuses on the descriptive characteristics that matter and then leaves everything else completely absent so that it's much more likely for the reader to put themselves into Bella's point of view. So it's not about a misfit of archetype. It's about by using good demonstration, showing good connection and good descriptions that they'll use the right archetype from their own experience. So it's rather than trying to force a template onto something, it's their brain comes up with the associative template that works best and makes it relatable.
Correct. And another classic example of that is hills like white elephants, right? It's another classic example of dealing with purely archetypes without ever having to get to it and letting the reader or the person you're talking to come up with their own conclusion. The thing with it is it takes a lack of ego, right? You have to be able to be convinced that the other person's answer, whatever they came up with, is the right one. That has to be okay with you. You're transferring ownership to them. They're the co-creator. So thank you for that, CJ. Brilliant. Love that. Anybody else?
I saw that Yvonne
Perry, your brain's got to be going by now. Come on.
I saw Yvonne was raising her hand. Yvonne, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to say I've heard of Mary Had a Little Lamb,
Oh.
but my computer is
Check.
programmed that
Yeah.
then raise my hands.
If we do this, then we raise our hands, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Computer's helping.
And Jeffrey, have you used this technique to write a LinkedIn post that worked very well for you?
I've written over 100 LinkedIn posts, and yes, all of my posts are long form posts. They're up to 3,000 characters, and I've written them all with the technique. And yes, they score unusually high because as you start to read it, it's activating your mind and it keeps the person engaged because you're still kind of you're following along, you're building it, the thought process and the message in your own head as you're getting along. So there's no real clear exit, right? There's no real, I got to the point, okay, I'm going to skip the rest, right? You're compelled to want to know what's going on.
And so the next step for people here in this room and when they're watching the recording is to download your book. But what is your advice to practice this and to make it your own style of writing? So this sounds all very interesting. Now what? Okay, we read your book, and then what? How do we activate this? How does that work, Jeffrey?
Yeah, so in the back of the book, there is a checklist. So in the appendix, it shows you how to measure it against your writing so you can get better and better. You can go through the checklist, and it's not a here's the right way versus wrong way. There's a couple core pieces that you have to hit in order to hit the technique, but then it allows you to adapt to your own style. So my recommendation is you take and write some sample pieces, then play with it against the checklist so you can start to measure it, and then take it wherever your brain wants to go, right? Have fun with it. Let it become your own. My goal here, right, is to get this into the classrooms, right? Is my ultimate goal would be to get this into the classrooms so that the idea here is that that way that we teach people, that a way that we teach categorical thinking and pound it into people's heads, this offsets some of that and more people survive with that archetypal thinking and thought process in place. So we're more quick to be able to build those patterns and recognize. It also naturally has built in unbiased, right? Because you're comparing the similarities, you're connecting the dots, you're overlaying things and showing where they connect. Bias comes from looking at the differences. If you're only focused on the similarities, biases fall away. So my advice, Perry, after reading the book, use the checklist, protect it, or practice it just like anything else. It's a learned skill, and you'll
I
get
just
better and
separated
better
it
at it
for
over time.
everyone. It's down there in the chat if you want it.
Thank you, Ansher. Ansher's been geeking out with the book quite a bit, so he's twisted it up and down in just about every way you possibly could.
So there's
Matt.
a kind of a famous quote. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Matt, I mean, you and I jammed recently, right? So some of this stuff, you downloaded the book. I know. I don't think you've had a chance to look at it because I know you're busy trying to get some code out. But I mean, from what you're hearing, what's your thoughts?
No, I love it. Anchar and I are working on a project right now together. So like it's serendipitous that I met you. Anchar, I haven't even told Anchar that I've met with you recently. So like it's all in sort of real time. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. I think the ethical part I think is one that you and I talked about, but to bring it up here, I'm not sure if ethics is the right word, but there is a power that you wield with that that I think you should be used sort of intelligently and not as a predator, if that makes sense, right? Because it could be very easily exploited. And so I think you and I talked about the implications of e-commerce, right? Like compelling someone to buy something in a way that makes it almost unfair that they're going to have to buy it by the end is something that you at least need to be aware of, right? Like, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thing to have to think about because you don't really have that in any other circumstance. It would just be hubris, you saying that, right? Like it wouldn't be sort of mathematical, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm trying to articulate what I'm thinking here.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense.
Um, but yeah, it's an interesting, I love it. I'm actually peeling it apart in the middle of a whole bunch of other lexicographical endeavors right now. So it's, like I said, it's serendipitous.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having you put some of my writer sample through your machine and see
Yeah,
what
we
comes out
should have
with it.
that by tomorrow, by the way. I meant to hit you
Yes.
back on that. So
And Teresa,
So
thank you for joining.
there's a long-standing quote that I've heard that I really like that says that that artists use lies to tell the truth. What's your opinion on that, and how can you leverage that in a positive way in creativity?
I actually struggle with lies. So what I've done is but the thing with it I realized though is that because I have to work with different people, different age groups, and because I'm a leader, I've understand the fact that there's different truths, right? So it was once believed that the world was flat. Okay, that's a belief. That's true. That was the truth at the time. Now, that truth didn't mean it was factually correct, right? The world is spherical, but at the time it was believed that that was the truth. So truth is different than fact. And I think that what you do there, Anshar, is you build into those truths and into those beliefs, and you can play into those a little bit again through archetypes because beliefs have a core understanding of how people think about it and how people, you know, hold them dear, and you can make up a sentence or a premise and talk about it and say this is a belief that you hold dear, and everybody will have that belief that they hold dear that's kind of true to them. And as long as you don't break that by specifying something very specific, you maintain that truth of their own and allow them to keep it throughout your story. So like one example is in again in the book, referring back to the book, The Rain, which is chapter 14. It plays into that fact and the fact that it walks you through a scenario. So somebody's having a devastating situation and it walks them through the scenario, but it never tells you what the scenario is. It never tells you who they are. It never tells you what gender, pronouns, anything, right? But you build this scenario in your own mind from your episodic memory, from the things that you know, and it relates to it. And at the end, then it tries to reframe all that instantly at the end, and it does it twice, right? But because you've created the character, you feel it all the more because it's your character that's experiencing this now, and you actually come up. What did you share, Answer?
I was showing that, it's that whole hero of a thousand faces idea, the how a transformative journey, it's about parable too. I think one of the things the points about lies and telling the truth is that if you can give someone a story, an allegory, or a proof by demonstration, then they'll get their own relatability out of it too. So whether a journey is transformative or it follows the old format of an epic, or I think one of the cool things about writing is that you can actually focus on an objective, or you can focus on relatability, or you can focus on a message. There's so many different ways of approaching that. Um, and you can do that in anything from poetry to story writing. And I think that that's really powerful.
Yeah, and I've used it to write some blog posts on some very, taboo topics. And you can play with that because you don't have to necessarily describe the topics or make a decision. You're talking about the generalities of them, and everybody can nod along and kind of see where you're headed without actually having to talk about the topic itself. So, one of the things, again, back to the book, chapter is the touch, chapter 17, it is an unbannable, you could theoretically use it as an unbannable sex education book story, right? Because it tells about intimate touch, but it does it in a way that it could mean anything to anybody. It could be any pronoun, any combination. It could be a solo experience or a partnered experience. It could be an early life experience. It could be recovering from trauma. There's any way you can interpret it, but there's nothing that's sexually explicit about it. There's no mention of anything that could get it banned because it's all activating the person's mind.
So does anyone have any writing that they're about to set out to do, or that they're currently working on, that they're curious how these principles might apply? Or if you have questions about that, or I know one of the things that I deal with a lot when I do copywriting is that people forget that the people who need your product or service the most are the people that are least like you. If you're a systems thinker, your big benefit is helping people who are disorganized and overwhelmed. So if you just use your own siloed thinking to relate a message, you can sometimes completely skip over the frustrations that make them feel like you understand how being opposite from the way that you are manifests itself in the world. So it's an interesting consideration for audience. It looks like CJ has a question.
Yeah, CJ, go ahead. And Anshar, I pasted a couple things in chat, so check those out for what you just talked about of looking at your own writing. CJ, go ahead.
Totally. Have you had success with people that you've mentored who are women doing the same thing, like particularly when they do autobiographic content? Because I'm seeing like archetypes, men kind of win out right now.
Yeah, so I do, and part of, I mean, a lot of the things that I'm using in my book are, some of them are female archetypes, and I don't think that the gender has to come into play there in my mind. When I work with mentoring leaders and different things, one of the things I find fascinating is executives and leaders that are trying to find a job, they have a very hard time selling themselves. They can sell their product, they can sell these things. So what I tell them to do instead, and what I teach them to do, and when I'm mentoring is think of yourself as a product, right? Think of how you're presenting yourself to other people. They don't know you, they don't know what it is, they don't know the product. But if you disassociate from your describing yourself and describing a product that's like you can turn it into an archetype and explain it without having to feel self-promotional. Because that's where I get stuck when I'm writing my autobiography, is I don't like to say, here's all the cool things I did, right? But when I talk to somebody in my network, they say, and they were to describe me, they might say, here's some of the things that Ansher would say that Jeffrey's done. Does that help, CJ? Does that make sense at all? And Teresa, do you have any thoughts here? No thoughts. Okay.
Well, I
I
have
have
lots of
thoughts
thoughts,
here,
but
but
no,
they're
this is
kind of
wonderful.
digressive.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine, right? So, but I hope you can kind of start to see the point of it, right? Is if you read my bio and things like that, you'll find that I'm talking more about what I deliver to people, the services, and what the outcomes are going to be, rather than focusing so much on me, because I find it very difficult to be self-promotional. Are you building
I
a tool that
personally have
helps
no
us?
problem with being self-promotional. It's I'm autistic, so like to me, it's just a fact. But I'm a woman. I'm not
Absolutely.
allowed to do that.
Uh, well, I mean, yes. So I think that speaking facts are something you can do, right? I mean, the fact that you're a woman speaking the facts, I have a lot of strong women in my world. And I look up to some of them greatly, right? I mean, I know that that's culturally different in certain places, but I'm very, from an autistic perspective, then men and women should effectively be the same from a factual perspective.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But that is a digression.
Yes.
Well, and there's the current ongoing thing with LinkedIn hiding female posts versus male posts for the same exact content. So,
Yeah.
as much as we individually can be unbiased and attract people that are unbiased and like-minded, that doesn't mean that the algorithms aren't.
Yeah. And I like some of the work you're doing, Karen, because it leans into that, right?
Yeah.
So some of the stuff, you guys are working on is pretty cool about that, because yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that, right? And it is tough, because as much as we want to be unbiased, there's the world out there that's not.
Yeah. And so I think, I don't know how, back to my question in the chat, are you building a tool that will help me do that faster than reading the
I'm
book and trying to learn the techniques?
um I'm not writing a tool like that, but I think that some of the things that some of the others on here are working on are trying to help write that, and Ansha and I are exploring some of those things as well to see what we can do. But I think that one of the things I wrote, the way that I wrote the book, is if you read chapter one, then
Mm-hmm.
you explore whatever chapters you want. It's not linear. It's
Yeah.
intended to be nonlinear, right? So go
Awesome.
read pieces of it, just the parts that matter to you, even within the chapters. I've structured them the same way each chapter. So if there's a part that just speaks to you in the way that your mind works, go to the chapter, read it, and just read that part. Skip the rest.
Or if you prefer, since you have a copy of the PDF, convert it to a text file, separate it by chapter, load those individual chapters as text files into a custom GPT and ask it what the primary takeaway is for a chapter, then ask it to give you a writing exercise so you can learn by doing.
Yeah. I'd really love something for me to just dump my thoughts in and then it make it more cognitively appealing to people.
Right, but because communication is about the recipient, you got to figure out who people are.
Yes.
If you want it to be
Right.
appealing, it's got to be appealing to a certain. But the second that you start asking those questions, what is the avatar that I'm speaking to? A lot of
Yeah.
those questions start to self-answer, which is kind of cool. So sometimes the coolest thing that
Okay.
you can do is figure out who is reading this and why. If you can answer that question, sometimes the how automatically kind of comes out of that procedurally.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's like anything. There's a couple basic core techniques and they're kind of outlined in chapter 1. And then if you can absorb them from that, because some people pick things up really, really fast, right? If you kind of grasp those concepts, look for a couple examples, and then go run with it, right? You don't have to become an expert at running to know how to run.
Mm-hmm.
And CJ, I don't know if you're still on, but I would be happy to help you with your bio if you, I would invite you to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with that too, to work on that for you or with you.
Oh, totally. I think someone like turned off my camera because my face doesn't lie.
I'm not good at doing that either.
And Jeffrey, so if we're all playing with this and reading your book and trying to do a better job and different job, etc., and we have questions or we get stuck somewhere, are we how do we connect with you? Are you fine with us sending you an email? Do we connect on LinkedIn? How would you like to do that? Looking
Yeah,
at
well, I mean,
this
I
group of
think
people.
there's two different places, right? One is I would encourage anybody who's listening in to join the Octopus movement, right? So through the Octopus movement portal, we can all kind of connect through there. I'm happy to take, any sorts of questions and deep dives on that. That's a great way to reach out. And then, I pretty much lived on LinkedIn. So if something comes through me on LinkedIn, I see it pretty quick. Yes, there's the link. Thank you, Anshar. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to communicate there. And I've got some pretty exciting things coming up. Like I said, I've got University of Michigan who wants me to do a presentation with them about the book too.
Can I ask everyone? I don't know what to ask yet, but this is my nonlinear brain kicking in. So help me. We all have been listening to Jeffrey in this brain lunch, and it's a real brain lunch, how a brain lunch should be. So well done, Jeffrey. I want to ask everyone, what sparkles with you listening to Jeffrey? And we're not looking for the beautiful and profound and intellectual answers. I'm looking for an answer that fits with this topic. What happened with your thinking while listening to Jeffrey, while thinking about cognitive writing? I'm curious about all of your thoughts. So maybe write 3 words down in the chat, whatever comes to mind, and then let's, Jeffrey, you and I will look at the people writing stuff in the chat, and then we ask a few people to explain a little bit what they wrote in the chat, how they see this brain lunch and what happened to them listening to you. Can we do that, please? And if you write something and we think, oh, that's cool, so 3 words, whatever, 4 words or 5 words, forget about the rules. And if you're saying when we select you, okay, we want to know more of Yvonne, what she wrote, and you're thinking, no, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to. That's also fine. You just say no, right, Jeffrey? Everything is possible. So if you look at the chat, what's coming in, select one.
I want to call
select
Yvonne
one.
out, right? Yes,
Yvonne? Yeah, Yvonne. Let's do
I
Yvonne.
love that, right? Goes against what I learned before.
Yeah.
I cannot stress that enough. When I was in school and they used to teach me writing, it never made sense to me because it just felt wrong. So I came up with my own way.
So, Yvonne, share something with us, what you're thinking. What goes against what I learned before. What do you want to share with us about your thought?
Well, I once wrote a book as part of I worked with a company and we wrote a book which was pretty cool actually. It was all about change management and everybody was to deliver one chapter. And we went away for a weekend, lots of fun, and then we got writing lessons. And literally, the teacher told us you have to describe in detail what you see for the reader to be drawn into your story and to understand what is happening. So that kind of like always stuck with me. And then I listened to you and I did the exercise and I was like, yeah, I don't like the cat. I don't know what color you gave it, but it wasn't my cat anymore. So I was like, I'm pretty bummed. So and it was, of course, the first example, but that kind of stuck with me. So I like that it goes against it. And I'm curious about the book.
There's
Thank
Absolutely.
you,
That's
quote
Yvonne.
fantastic.
saying in creative writing, show, don't tell. So when someone says to describe something, I think that abstracts it a bit too much because you can say that, a person's haughty and that they have disdain for others or that they're self-involved. But if you just describe a few key behaviors, their facial expressions or their reaction to something, and then let the reader's mind fill in that archetype, conclusions that the reader draws are so much more powerful than something that you've told them to think or believe. And I think that was one of the things that stood out most to me when my writing started to evolve was instead of what should I say, what shouldn't I say?
I like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Ansar. I'm curious about Todd because I know Todd is reading a lot of books. If I think about books, book reviews, interesting books, and I think Todd reads a book a week at least. Your thought was thought-provoking, but we need to read the book first to better understand. And I hear you. You want to add something to that, Todd? What are your
Sure,
thoughts?
thanks, Perry. Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, the foundation of communication is to get an idea out of your head and into the heads of other people. So my catchphrase is, how do you get people to see what you're saying? That's the foundation. For those who don't know, I'm the author of the book Visual Leadership. So what's interesting, just like with the cat example and the apple example, like if I say the word football, right? Those of us in the US are picturing this. Those of you in Europe may be picturing this, right? They're both called football, but our paradigm shape which image pops into our head. So sometimes you want to leave it ambiguous and let people create their own story. And other times, if I say, go to the store and buy me a football, and you come back with the wrong one, then we have a problem, right? But if I say, tell me a story about your experience with football, it doesn't matter. You shape your own story based on what football means to you. So there's some my takeaway. One of my takeaways is sometimes you want to be very specific and intentional and get the other person to see what you're saying, but other times you want to plant the seed metaphor and let the other person grow their own tree, right? So again, that's basically what I'm thinking right now. So thank you, Perry, for calling on me.
Thank you,
What are your
Todd.
thoughts on that, Jeffrey? What are your thoughts on that? What I just said?
Oh, I love that. And it's that whole, again, a bias type thing, right? Because a bias is because we're using that initial knowledge to prove that we're right, right? Our minds want to be right. Our minds want to fill in the gap. They want to understand. It's that comprehension. So it's going to start with the base template that it knows of that archetype and then fill it out. And that's why when I did the exercise earlier with the elephant, you held the elephant up, right? Is our mind will automatically check the boxes off and make sure it was right, and it knows it came to the right conclusion. It wasn't wrong because I created the scaffolding for that to be correct.
Jeffrey, do you want to bring anyone else to stage when you look at the meeting chat? Is there anyone else where you think, oh, I want to, maybe Donna's word to Ubuntu, what Donna, yeah, Donna, tell us more, Donna. What do you think? Sorry, Jeffrey, I was asking who to bring to
That's
stage
good.
and I answered,
Non-linear,
oh
right? I
my
like
God,
it.
don't do that, Perry. Sorry. Donna, what are your thoughts?
Well, just out of all of this, my kind of focus in life, and it's like, okay, how do we get the world to experience ourselves as one, our common humanity? So I'm looking at this, okay, is there a way that that there's something to put out in 3 words that would have everyone in the world, no matter what their culture, like go in that direction. So that's why I had word to Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African concept or word of I am that we all are. Or am I even getting that right? But it's like, I exist because of all of us, or we are all interconnected. We do not exist without the other. We are all one. I am that you are. So I am that we are. So how to so I'm listening to all this as to what could be put out there. Like in 3 words that could get people from all different countries and cultures
what a good
to that.
question,
Yeah.
Donna. I love that. And
Yeah.
of course you're asking this.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
curious what Jeffrey's thinking. Jeffrey,
I
like,
want
Yeah.
somebody else to answer it. I think this is cool. It's been all me. I want
Well,
other people.
yeah, my thing was about organizational transformation, which is the same. It's along the lines of what Donna's asking is like, the human score measures all these different pieces of being human. Is there a way to use this tool to awaken the leaders to their own biases? Like, because racism is an easy one to understand. Most people would say, but I'm not a racist. But when you start to look at specific stories, there may be in all of us some instances or moments of racism that we are not even aware of. So can this fill
Implicit
in the
bias.
blank?
Yeah,
Yes.
implicit bias.
Can this technique be used in a, I don't know, covert way, like Donna was saying, to make people realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm I'm doing this and I don't even know that I'm doing this, because you can't point your finger at someone and say you're doing this and them not want to defend themselves, but through self-awareness, they can go, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, and
Well,
they
yeah, you
are
can
a
use
human being just like
demonstration,
I am.
description. You can use the word like sonder. You can do something in parable or allegory. You can point out a fact and see what happens for that missing pattern completion. For example, during the time period for about 10 months where September 11th was on literally every single news station nonstop for 10, 11 months. For those 6,000 lives that were lost during that time period, over 200,000 people died to Boko Haram, and it wasn't on any news station. So sometimes when you give a fact, you don't need to say anything else, and it gives people an opportunity to reflect on that or to draw their own conclusion. Sometimes it's a lot more powerful.
Yeah, and Leanne, some of the questions I worked on with Leanne, or Karen, what I worked on with Leanne, some of those questions, right, where you tapping into the same concept. We wrote the questions in such a way that it fires that episodic memory in a way that makes sense to them without asking them a specific question to get them leading down to, here's the answer I expect to get. We want to open that out to the human connections, really get inside their head. So we purposely asked very intentionally crafted questions that would fire a thought process and say, oh yeah, here's what I'm thinking of. So they didn't really have to think about it because it was just there automatically.
Has anyone ever seen Clan of the Cave Bear with Daryl Hannah back from the 80s? I think one of the things that's really cool about that movie is that you can watch it with the subtitles if you get a DVD version. But if you turn the subtitles off, after about 10 or 15 minutes of watching them use gestural communication, you don't need subtitles anymore. There's a really interesting phenomenon of pattern completion in the brain. And when our attention is focused on something, sometimes all it takes is a word to understand an entire set of concepts. And I think that's one of the really powerful and cool things about language.
Yeah, so I mean, to kind of wrap up, because we're getting down to the end, right? So I want to just, encourage anybody to download the book. It's free. Download it, use it, right? Have some fun with it. And the biggest thing I can ask you is share it with somebody. Share it with somebody else, right? Take what you've got, learn something from it, but please share. That's the best thing I could ask from any of you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jeffrey.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Indeed, Karen. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being here at the Brain Lunch. Thank you for everyone participating. If you have any questions for Jeffrey, please do reach out to Jeffrey on our platform of the Octopus Movement or on LinkedIn, or when you get lost and you can't find Jeffrey anywhere else, just connect with me and I will make it happen. Thank you so much. And if you're here and you're thinking, oh, wait a second, I can give a brain lunch. I can give a brain lunch about an interesting topic that I'm very passionate about. Please let me know. Send an email to info@theoctopusmovement.org, and then we can talk about it, send you a link so we can organize this. Again, this is going to be a recording. I will share that with the whole movement. I will stop the recording now, and thank you so much, Jeffrey, for doing this and creating this. And even a bigger thank you for making this available for free to the whole world, which is absolutely fucking awesome. Thank you so
Before
much for
people
doing that.
leave,